Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Elon gave us a nearly 3-hour interview with Dwarkesh Patel and John Collison, the co-founder of Stripe. And man, listening to this one has me changing my mind a bit about Tesla and SpaceX merging. Elon's plans are quite literally not of this world. And we did actually get some new timelines.
Like Tesla's pedal to the metal max production of going as fast as possible to get Tesla AI5 chip design into production and then reaching scale. That'll probably happen second quarter-ish of next year, hopefully. And then AI6 would hopefully follow less than a year later.
So it's not exactly clear if he was talking about Q2 next year, hopefully, for production or scale, but I would stick with production for now. For anyone still doubting Tesla plans full vertical integration for solar panels and the cells, here you go.
Both SpaceX and Tesla are building towards 100 gigawatts a year of solar cell production.
How low down the stack, like from polysilicon up to the wafer to the final panel?
I think you got to do the whole thing from raw materials to finish the cell. Now, if it's going to space, it costs less and it's easier to make solar cells that go to space because they don't need glass, or they don't need much glass, and they don't need heavy framing because they don't have to survive weather events. There's no weather in space. So it's actually a cheaper solar cell that goes to space than the one on the ground. By far, the cheapest and most scalable way to generate tokens is space. It's not even close. It'll be an order of magnitude easier to scale, and chips aside, an order of magnitude. Well, if the point is you won't be able to scale on the ground, it's just you just won't. People are going to hit the wall big time on power generation. They already are.
So these solar panels that will go to space will be a bit different and actually easier and cheaper to manufacture, which is part of why Elon reiterated that he thinks by far the cheapest place to put these data centers will be in space in less than 36 months, probably closer to 30 months. And then from there, it'll be ridiculously better to put them in space. He really believes the only way to scale intelligence is going to be in space because people are already hitting the wall of electricity generation. Elon mentioned a new potential product line for Tesla down the road, which actually has to do with gas turbines.
Like the turbines are sold out through 2030.
Have you guys considered making your own?
I think in order to bring enough power online, I think SpaceX and Tesla will probably have to make the turbine blades, the vanes and blades, internally.
But just the blades or the turbines?
The limiting factor, you can get everything except the blades, what they call the blades and vanes. You can get that 12 to 18 months before the vanes and blades. The limiting factor of the vanes and blades. And there are only 3 casting companies in the world that make these, and they're massively backlogged.
So on a gas turbine, the vanes are the part that does not actually rotate. Their primary function is to accelerate and direct the gas flow onto the following row of blades. So the vanes make sure that happens at the optimal angle and speed. And then of course, it's the blades that actually rotate. They extract that energy from the gas and convert it into rotational mechanical energy. And why is production so backlogged? Well, there are a few reasons, but the main one is the materials required are prone to delays because you need a very specific advanced material to actually endure these extreme temperatures. And further, the demand for these gas turbines has exploded to drive all of these data centers. And only 3 companies drive 70% of the production in the industry: Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, GE Vernova, and Siemens Energy. And there's also labor shortages as making these components requires highly skilled workers. If you're still wondering why Elon's planning to take SpaceX public despite the headaches,
Make some general statements for us about the depth of the capital markets between public and private markets.
There's obviously a lot more capital available in the public markets than private. I mean, it might be it might be 100 times more capital, but it's at least way more than 10.
in my opinion, I think XAI has been very quiet about what it's working on the human emulator side, the digital Optimus, as we've referred to it in weeks past. And if XAI can figure this out, the scale of this addressable market is incomprehensible, on par with or potentially exceeding the physical Optimus.
So if you have a human emulator, you can basically create one of the most valuable companies in the world overnight, and you would have access to trillions of dollars of revenue. It's not like a small amount. I mean, if you take something as simple as, say, customer service, if you have to integrate with the APIs of existing corporations, many of which don't even have an API, so you've got to make one, and you've got to wade through legacy software. That's extremely slow. However, if AI can simply take whatever is given to the outsourced customer service company that they already use, and do customer service using the apps that they already use, then you can make tremendous headway in customer service, which is, I think, 1% of the world economy, something like that. It's close to $1 trillion all in for customer service, and there's no barriers to entry. It's just, you can just immediately say, well, we'll outsource it for a fraction of the cost, and there's no integration needed. I think we see a path to doing it. I mean, I think I know the path to do this, because it's kind of the same path that Tesla used to create self-driving. Instead of driving a car, it's driving a computer screen.
So all of Tesla's learnings with FSD for the cars will not only transfer to Optimus, but will transfer to the digital Optimus for XAI and this human emulator future. Elon then doubled down on the importance of the physical hand for Optimus.
There are really only three hard things for humanoid robots: the real-world intelligence, the hand, and scale manufacturing.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any, even demo robots that have a great hand, like with all the degrees of freedom of a human hand. But Optimus will have that. Optimus does have that. Well, we had to design custom actuators, basically custom designed motors, gears, power electronics, controls, sensors. Everything had to be designed from physics first principles. There is no supply chain for this.
And will you be able to manufacture those at scale?
Yes.
Is anything hard except the hand from a manipulation point of view, or once you've solved the hand, are you good?
From an electromechanical standpoint, the hand is more difficult than everything else combined. Yeah, human hand turns out to be quite something. But then you also need the real world intelligence that Tesla has developed for the car. Applies very well to the robot, and a bunch of the things that we've done for the car are applicable to the robot. So we'll use the same Tesla AI chips in the robot as the car. We'll use the same basic principles. It's very much the same AI. You've got many more degrees of freedom for a robot than you do for a car. What we're going to need to do is build a lot of robots and put them in kind of like an Optimus Academy, so they can do self-play in reality. So we're actually pulling that out. So we're going to have at least 10,000 Optimus robots, maybe 20 or 30,000 that are doing self-play and testing different tasks. Tesla has quite a good reality generator, like a physics-accurate reality generator that we made this for the cars. We'll do the same thing for the robots, and actually have done that for the robots. So you have a few tens of thousands of humanoid robots doing different tasks, and then you can do millions of simulated robots in the simulated world, and you use the tens of thousands of robots in the real world to close the simulation to reality gap, close the sim to real gap. Grok would orchestrate the behavior of the Optimus robots. Let's say you wanted to build a factory, then Grok could organize the Optimus robots, assign them tasks to build the factory to produce whatever you want.
What will these first billion Optimi do? Like, what will their highest and best use be?
I think you would start off with simple tasks that you can count on them doing well.
But in the home or in factories, like?
The best use for robots in the beginning will be any continuous operation, so any 24/7 operation, because they can work continuously.
Yeah. What fraction of the work at a gigafactory that is currently done by humans could a Gen 3 do?
I'm not sure. Maybe it's like 10-20%, maybe more. I don't know. We would not like reduce our headcount. We would for sure increase our headcount, to be clear.
Right.
But we would increase our output.
How do you design this chip for space? What changes?
Well, I guess you want to design it to be more radiation tolerant and run at a higher temperature. So you could, roughly, if you increase the operating temperature by 20% in degrees Kelvin, you can cut your radiator mass in half. Running at a higher temperature is helpful in space. But like neural nets are going to be very resilient to bit flips.
Yeah.
So like most of what happens for radiation is like random bit flips. But like if you've got like, a multi-trillion parameter model and you get a few bit flips, doesn't matter.
Millions of wafers a month. That's the plan with Terafab? Millions of wafers a month of advanced process nodes?
Yeah, it's could be some number north of 1 million, I think. You got to do the memory too.
You're going to make a memory fab?
I think the Terafab's got to do memory. It's got to do logic, memory, and packaging. So no, I mean, like, I don't know. We could just flounder and failure. To be clear, it's like not success is not guaranteed. But since we want to try to make something like 100 million, we want 100 gigawatts of power and 100 chips that can take 100 gigawatts, right? So call it, by 2030.
So I'm very glad that Elon said success is not guaranteed here to a broader audience, but overall it was a very solid interview. I'll have the whole thing linked below. I need to get this off my chest real quick. When someone or something gets big, the competition will attack. We've seen it with Tesla. It happens all the time, which is exactly what's happening with AG1. All I'm going to say on the matter is that calling out a 4-week random control trial and expecting clinical level benefits for something like AG1 in that time frame is crazy. Plus, it totally ignores how AG1 was clinically shown to enrich the gut microbiome over a 12-week period, which is still a very short timeline in the grand scheme of things. The 75 plus ingredients of the next-gen formula does have 5 probiotic strains, but this is a long-term nutrient optimization play, not a short-term panacea. And I can tell you from experience, impacting your gut biome takes months, even with targeted therapy. So just don't let someone with competing products lead you astray. Do your own research and try things for yourself, because while AG1 does sponsor the channel, I generally feel better with it as a regular part of my life than when I don't, full stop. And I'm guessing some of you right now are in that dreaded winter energy slump season, and AG1 can help to support consistent energy and focus levels. So it's not just for immunity support. And don't forget about their AGZ to help support quality sleep. So if you want to support the channel and more importantly, your own health, if you head to drinkag1.com/electrified, linked below, you'll get 3 free AG1 travel packs and 3 free AGZ travel packs, plus free vitamin D3K2 and an AG1 welcome kit with your first AG1 subscription order. Now, on this whole Tesla and SpaceX thing, I needed to take some time to sit with everything happening in the Muskonomy. I just had to check out for a bit to not allow the public opinion to sway my thinking so I could think through this and come up with a list of considerations for all of us. The prevailing sentiment is about 80% of people think Tesla and SpaceX merging is either very likely to happen or a done deal, and many still think it's going to happen before a SpaceX IPO. But let's just walk through some things first. My goal is not to persuade you one way or another. I will share my personal thoughts at the end, but I just want to inform everyone on everything that needs to be considered ahead of a potential SpaceX and Tesla merger. I shouldn't need to explain that this would be the most consequential development in Tesla's entire history. So we need to approach it with due diligence and careful thought rather than relying on emotions and hype from the community. There would be a vote before something like this happens, so I just want to arm everyone with what needs to be factored in before we make our decisions. And this is in no particular order because everybody values certain things differently. Let's start with national defense and security. SpaceX has numerous contracts signed with NASA over the years for crew and cargo transport, lunar landers, and so on. These contracts over the years likely exceed $10 billion. SpaceX also has Department of Defense contracts for launches, Starshield, Starlink, and cargo, also totaling over $10 billion. And if you see different funding numbers, it's likely because of reporting and how organizations classify contracts versus subsidies. And don't forget, XAI has a deal with the Department of Defense to integrate Grok. Other federal agencies have agreed to integrate Grok, and the Department of Energy is working with XAI for a Genesis mission focused on security innovation. And for SpaceX and XAI, I'll just refer to this new entity as SpaceX for now. This is just the beginning. As we push more intelligence and energy harnessing into space, and as Starship launches increase in frequency, things will continue to shift, and SpaceX will continue to be a critical part of national defense. Now, you've likely seen people say a Tesla and SpaceX merger can't happen because of Tesla's operations in China, or you've seen other people saying, it's no big deal, just look at Boeing. The problem is both of those approaches are lazy. Boeing is a major U.S. defense contractor with deep ties to NASA and the Department of Defense, as well as intelligence agencies, while also having significant operations in China. But here's the difference. Boeing has a clear firewall between its defense operations and commercial divisions. SpaceX, on the other hand, does not have that same separation, at least not yet. And further, Boeing's operations in China are largely through suppliers and joint ventures, not full-blown manufacturing hubs. And we know Giga Shanghai is exactly that for Tesla, a wholly owned mega operation that produces over half of Tesla's global output, with deep integration in China's ecosystem. This to say, Tesla would have to take meaningful reorganization steps to push a merger through, which could take months just due to national security clearances alone. And now, it's not inconceivable to think that Tesla could sell its Chinese operations, but I have a hard time believing Tesla would want to give up its foothold in the biggest EV market in the world that's currently racing toward autonomy that supplies meaningful volume across the EU. It's the factory where Tesla deploys new technology first. It's the factory with the lowest manufacturing costs for Tesla by far. And this is just one consideration. I think it's clear there are significant challenges and potential trade-offs. They're certainly not insurmountable, but things we all need to be thinking through. Next up would be raising capital. This is the driving force behind all of this for Elon, in my opinion. The numbers he throws around will require trillions of dollars over the long term. SpaceX, xAI, and Tesla all need money. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars over just the next few years. So, a sound question, what's the best way for all three companies to do that? And just know, generally speaking, reverse mergers happen because they're faster and easier than an IPO. They don't happen because it's the optimal way to raise capital. But here's the thing, this wouldn't even be a reverse merger. This would likely be a stock-for-stock acquisition with Tesla as the surviving entity if it were to happen before a SpaceX IPO. Usually, a reverse merger has a private company merging into a small shell company to quickly list its stock without an IPO, where SpaceX would remain as the surviving entity. So inherently, reverse mergers don't actually raise money at all. It is just a restructuring of ownership. But with that technical nuance out of the way, I'll refer to this hypothetical new company if a merger did happen as X, with Tesla merging with SpaceX. In the event these companies merged, whatever the mechanics, they would then need to either issue new shares or go to banks and take on debt. And before that, Tesla would need to issue new shares to buy out SpaceX investors, which, yes, is dilutive to the tune of maybe 50%. And you can pause the screen if you want to read through the example I shared on X for how that would work. The numbers are not up to date, but the mechanics would be the same. But yes, SpaceX would likely require Tesla to pay a premium over whatever the current market value is, meaning Tesla has to issue more shares. So if SpaceX wants a valuation of 1.5 trillion for easy math and Tesla's valued at 1.5 trillion, Tesla would have to double the outstanding share count to buy out SpaceX. So Tesla investors would go from owning 100% of Tesla to owning 50% of the new company X. Then after that, let's say X was valued at $3 trillion, the new company. If X then did a 5% secondary offering, it would raise about $150 billion minus fees, which yes, is dilutive, but it's far more money than SpaceX would raise in an IPO on its own. And it's more than Tesla is likely going to want to take out as debt from banks. But it's also true that the diversified revenue streams of X would likely make it easier for X to raise debt at better prices. Now, you'll have some people focusing on the 5% dilution that the market would have to absorb, call it 350 million new shares based on the new X company float that would be sitting around 7 billion shares. And yeah, that would result in some downward pressure on the stock price in the short term, but it would be dilutive across a much bigger base of SpaceX and xAI investors, not just Tesla. But clearly this is all hypothetical. The demand for this new X company is likely to be historic, as a merger like this would be unprecedented. And for long-term investors, we shouldn't care so much about short-term fluctuations. We should be asking if we like the prospect of these three merged entities getting $150 billion to start putting to work in a scenario like that. And on this point, we have to consider the alternatives too. If Tesla and SpaceX stay separate, there's likely going to be Tesla investors selling their Tesla stock to buy the SpaceX IPO. I don't think it would be massive like others are saying, as many investors have waited 5 years for what we're about to see with Tesla, but some will undoubtedly sell some Tesla stock and rebalance their portfolios. And there's always the scenario that Tesla and SpaceX could merge after a SpaceX IPO. Many people are saying right now that would be way harder, but I actually actually don't think that's true. I think it's just a talking point that then gets parroted around by the community. Mergers of large public companies means the valuations are already tested by the market, which actually leads to avoiding all of these valuation disputes where mergers with a private company can arise. Example, how much should we as Tesla shareholders be willing to pay for SpaceX when we don't really know anything about its actual revenues or profits? And the same could be said for XAI. But as a public company, that all changes and things become transparent. Now, it's true, public mergers may require some more governance, but it also protects these companies from lawsuits and fiduciary disputes because of that extra layer of monitoring. And all of the public filings make things much more predictable and less up for debate. So there may be some extra steps after a SpaceX IPO, but it's really not that big of a deal. That's why lawyers and advisors exist. And actually, the main merger and acquisition risks like overpaying and regulatory blockers are much lower when both companies are public because of that transparency. So just remember to think through these things on your own. Don't just hear something and then adopt it because of who said it. And for me, I happen to think this popular narrative that a post-SpaceX IPO merger with Tesla is too hard is nonsense, in my opinion. And I think it might even face less challenges than trying to ram it through before a SpaceX IPO. Because again, it has the benefit of removing that valuation debate. Which brings me to another point, the conglomerate discount, which just means a diversified company with multiple, sometimes unrelated businesses gets valued by the market at less than the sum of its individual parts. This is because investors and analysts struggle to model and value complex companies, which leads to analysts overlooking things, and it's precisely why many of them prefer pure play stocks that focus on one industry. All that to say, conglomerates historically have traded 10 to 20% below what standalone businesses could be valued at in the market individually. And yes, you guessed it, that's why companies will spin off parts of their business to unlock the full valuation potential. One great example I think many of you will know was GE. It was in aviation, healthcare, energy, and so on, and it traded at a discount for years because analysts couldn't figure out what to do with it, so they sat on the sidelines. Then GE decided to spin off into 3 separate focused companies, and the combined market cap after the spinoff was about $180 billion higher than it was as one giant company, which unlocked over 60% more value. And there are plenty of other examples like this. So once the hype dies down around this new X company, the valuations might settle materially lower than where they would be if they stayed separate. And further, in the case of Tesla and SpaceX, SpaceX is likely to be a cash-burning furnace along with XAI for the foreseeable future. Now, long term, 7, 10 plus years, of course, I think the upside is incredible, but we cannot overlook the significant cash drag that this company would be for Tesla. When will SpaceX and XAI actually be profitable? The big SpaceX push, data centers in space, Elon himself is saying that won't be the best path for another 2 to 3 years. And all of that SpaceX upside hinges on Starship being successful at scale, which sure, you could argue is likely, but I don't think it's a guarantee. And on what timeline? So for me, it would just be a big adjustment. I know Tesla like the back of my hand, in and out, up and down. And for me, I cannot say the same for SpaceX or XAI, largely because we just don't have enough data on these companies. So I can't be dogmatic about the current financials or future potential of SpaceX or XAI until we get more data, which again is why it's actually reasonable to want this company to become public before we actually vote on a mega merger like this. Something else to consider is what happens to Elon's new pay package at Tesla. What happens with that in the event of a merger with SpaceX? We can all speculate, but if it gets wiped out or replaced, then that needs to be factored into the equation. And don't forget, if this merger happens after a SpaceX IPO in a year or two, there's a world where SpaceX would be acquiring Tesla, and SpaceX is the surviving company. So for that Tesla incentive plan, the market cap targets would have to be changed, operational milestones need to be changed, vesting timelines, having another shareholder vote, and so on. Personally, I think in that event, the most likely outcome would be an amended pay package for Elon with some new milestones on the SpaceX XAI side as well. And sure, ultimately that could be a good thing, it's just right now we don't know. And I do think it's unlikely, but there is a world where that Tesla pay package just gets outright canceled. So despite me thinking that's unlikely, it's a non-zero probability. And so look, this is clearly not an exhaustive list, but I just wanted to put a little bit out there to hopefully get everybody thinking a bit deeper and thinking for themselves. Just because most people want to own SpaceX too, as fans of Elon, doesn't mean that this whole thing is a no-brainer. And let's be real, most people are just thinking this: I don't want to sell my Tesla stock to have to buy SpaceX in an IPO where I'm going to be bid up by the banks. And of course, I understand that. I'm in a similar boat. But if that's your only consideration here, I just think it's a bit short-sighted. Because again, even if no merger happens before the IPO, Elon can still try offering something for Tesla shareholders like we talked about on Monday. And a few other thoughts. I do think it's silly to make the argument that Elon wants to merge to avoid 4 more hours every year of conference calls. Yes, Elon wants to streamline, but he's not going to merge 2 multi-trillion-dollar companies because he wants to avoid quarterly calls. And yes, 2 separate public companies may require a bit more paperwork and governance, but guys, Elon is not doing that. He obviously has teams of people and he just responds to put out fires when he's needed, which he would be doing the same way either way. So from Elon's perspective, he's still going to have roughly the same amount of fires, the same amount of problems to put out whether these companies stay separate or merge. Another thing to think about: why would Tesla have invested in XAI if Elon knew that Tesla was just going to merge with SpaceX all along? Now, maybe it happened and things at SpaceX and XAI really did progress in a matter of days, but I'm not buying that. I think the most likely scenario is Tesla wanted to get into XAI, appease Tesla investors that clearly wanted it before XAI got acquired by SpaceX, knowing that SpaceX is likely to go public on its own, and then if a merger with Tesla ever happens, it'll be after that SpaceX IPO. So despite what everybody is saying, I personally think that's the most likely outcome if a merger happens at all. It would be after a SpaceX IPO. And then if and when a vote happens, all votes that are not submitted or not cast would count as no's in this case, so make sure you can vote your shares. But of course, everybody is just guessing here, myself included. At the end of the day, anything can happen, and we do have to trust that Elon, the executives at all companies, the inside investors, and Elon's advisory team will find the best path forward. No matter what the outcome is, there will be pros and cons. And really, to think that any of us knows better than that group of people is actually ridiculous. The conversations are being held now with lawyers and regulatory bodies, and those will determine the optimal route, and all we can do as shareholders is respond accordingly to inform ourselves as best we can, so when the time comes for a vote, we have the knowledge we need. And for me, for the next 5 years, I might actually lean toward preferring just Tesla exposure. But when I start thinking about the next 10 to 15 years, then I start wanting more SpaceX exposure as well. So a lot of where you land on this will come down to timelines. And like I said, I would have a lot of work to do personally to understand SpaceX and XAI on a level like I do Tesla. So just don't feel bad if you don't want this merger to happen, even though it is the minority view. Personally, I really am torn. I go back and forth with what I think I want to happen, and I have changed my mind a few times already. The more I think about the long term, the more I want the merger. The more I think about the next 3 to 5 years, I lean toward preferring them to stay separate. When the rumor mill first started, I didn't want it to happen. That was my knee-jerk reaction. Tesla is just now ready to scale and to ramp profitably, and I would hate to see that get diluted and overlooked as Wall Street tries to remodel everything with hesitation. And for me, selfishly, having 2 separate positions that I can add to and trim to as I see fit and as I consider my exit strategies would be a lot easier keeping those companies separate. So one way or another, I'm going to own both Tesla and SpaceX. And not to cop out here, but I do just trust Elon and his team to do what's best, and no matter what, I'm planning to be along for the ride. But again, my guess is a SpaceX IPO with some preferential treatment for Tesla owners, and then maybe a year or 2 down the line, once valuations settle in after the hype, the financials become public, perhaps the Tesla SpaceX merger talks pick up again at that point. And even if no merger happens, Tesla and SpaceX will obviously continue to cross-pollinate and share resources and collaborate to race toward intelligence at scale on Earth and in space. And just a few quick ones touching on the hearing the other day. So what you need to know is that clearly some of these senators were just taking orders from their Teamster constituents who are clearly strongly opposed to fully driverless AVs, especially in commercial trucking and delivery. They quite literally advocate for requiring human safety operators in autonomous vehicles for goods delivery, all to protect union jobs, framing autonomy as job-killing automation pushed by big tech. All you have to do is look at the Teamster website. It says, keep our streets safe, protect good jobs, require human safety operators. And you scroll down, big tech and corporations that invest in AVs keep telling us their vehicles are safe, but if we turn on the news, we know there are crashes occurring and that death, injuries, and the destruction of property have been caused by failures in autonomous tech. There were some very frustrating clips and attacks on Tesla and senators calling for LiDAR and giving Tesla a hard time for allowing customers to engage FSD on all streets and so on. But the silver lining was that most of the senators very clearly understand that autonomy is the future. They just have different opinions on the best path to get there. And I will say, I think Lars could have done a better job. He was a bit too passive in my opinion. I know he needed to be respectful, but he just didn't do a great job at explaining why Tesla has made certain decisions like cameras only and allowing customers to use FSD on all streets. And just one example, he missed a layup when Senator Lummis was talking.
I'm quickly entering the era when I might be a little old lady who wants the freedom to still be able to drive when maybe she should not. And I just want a button in a car that if I don't know where I am or I'm not as sharp as I was behind the wheel, that I can push a button in the car that says grocery store and another button that says home. Take me home.
And sure, maybe he would have needed to add some clarifiers, but he could have just said, Senator, that currently exists in every Tesla you buy from the factory. So more of the same. These senators who have clearly never used FSD talking like it's something of the future, when we know in reality it's here. It also came to light that some of Waymo's remote operators are actually based in the Philippines.
Let's turn to Tesla. Mr. Moravi, yes or no, does Tesla restrict its partially autonomous driving systems, such as full self-drive and autopilot, to save pre-mapped operational design domains?
Senator Markey, our driver's assistance system that you mentioned, full self-driving supervised in our vehicles, can be operated on a generalized solution in all public roads. On the other hand, our fully autonomous solution that is in operation in Austin is geofenced and mapped to limited area.
So what Tesla is doing, unlike Waymo, Teslas do not have technology that prevents drivers from triggering the full self-drive and autopilot in unsafe conditions. So from my perspective, that's outrageous because autopilot and full self-drive have already been involved in dozens of deaths because, in part, Tesla drivers can enable these driving systems on any road under any conditions. And by failing to follow the best practices of every other AV company, Tesla is putting American lives at risk. And that is unconscionable. Tesla's vehicles say full self-drive, but really they are only partial full self-drive. For the driver, that's very misleading to call something full self-drive when you cannot, in fact, meaningfully use that technology without increasing the danger. We need to ensure that they are supervised by human drivers when they are using full self-drive. So that's my message to Tesla. You got to do that. Other companies do it. You have to do it as well, or else we're going to continue to see recurrence of these accidents on the streets of our country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So again, he just sat there, took the message respectfully, but personally, I think after that tirade, you have to put your foot down and respond to this guy and share some truth and some data about why Tesla is doing it this way. This is your chance to explain to all of these senators why Tesla made those decisions and why it's actually the best way forward for Tesla. Of course, Waymo shouldn't allow its vehicles to go operate anywhere, but there's a reason why Tesla should not be restricted to these air quote best operating practices that the competition is following. And listen, not to sound callous here, but at the end of the day, it is still the human's fault for any of those accidents on autopilot or FSD. How about a simple comment, like clearly knowing that people are texting and driving, eating and driving, putting on makeup. Customers are going to do that anyway, so why not have FSD enabled to make it safer? So yeah, I was a bit disappointed in Lars, but zooming out, seeing the bigger picture, again, most of the senators know this is where things are headed. And hopefully reason will prevail in the end. And the senators attacking Tesla, and they were also attacking Waymo too, that are trying to score points with their donors and the Teamsters will be overruled in the end. In case you missed it, the Model Y standard is no longer a thing. It's just going to be the Model Y. So in the US, we now have 5 variants: rear-wheel drive, all-wheel drive, and then 2 premium trims, RWD and AWD, and then the Performance. The new all-wheel drive is now available in the US and Puerto Rico for $41,990 with a range of 294 miles, 0 to 60, 4.6 seconds.
Are you so convinced that you can solve this self-driving challenge only with cameras? I mean, you seem quite convinced, huh?
Yeah, it's like, how did you get here today? With the Waymo, okay, all right. But many people drove here with their own eyes. And then, obviously you can walk around this building with your own eyes. Like it's so obvious that you can solve this with cameras, for me at least. Why wouldn't you solve it with cameras? It's like 2026. It should be solved with cameras, just like how every other human and animal lives around this world. It's just very simple sensors. The self-driving problem is, thought of as a sensor problem. It's actually not a sensor problem. It's an AI problem. You need to understand the world. You need to understand what other people are going to do. And the cameras have enough information already. It's just the problem of extracting the information, which is an AI problem. The sensor solution was developed back in 2008 or whatever, during DARPA days, when there wasn't enough intelligence around back then to extract this information. And that's why you need to depend on all these other sensors back in the day. But nowadays, intelligence has grown tremendously. You can obviously extract this information, and once you have the AI, you don't need the other sensors. You just need the information, which is the cameras do provide.
That was from a presentation that Ashok gave earlier this week. I'll have it linked below, but it was very similar to the one he gave a few months ago. Sandil Pilani from Tesla just said that licensing FSD has not proven to be easy, despite our best efforts to share the technology. So, not really news, but just confirmation that nothing has changed. Starting in China, Tesla is now adding a "Hey Tesla" wake word with spatial awareness. So, when this feature is enabled, you can just say "Hey Tesla" to activate the voice assistant. For users in China, this new feature will wake their region-specific voice assistant, which is similar to Grok. And as we said earlier, many times these features start in China and then roll out globally after the fact. Tesla has filed 2 trademark applications, both for the upcoming Roadster. One is wording in a stylized font, and the other appears to be a sketch of the top of the vehicle. And hopefully, we're about 2 months away from the reveal. Reuters said that SpaceX is planning new Starlink products, including a mobile device connected to Starlink that could rival smartphones. To which Elon replied, "Reuters lies relentlessly." But the other day, he just said that something like a smartphone might happen down the road. So again, this could be a semantics game and Elon rejecting parts of this reporting. Because very clearly, Elon said it would not be a rival to a smartphone. Tesla stock closed the day at $397.21, down 2.17%, while the NDX was down 1.51%. The volume was 11% above the average. Don't forget, check out AG1 linked below for those interested. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.